When I say Josh Smith, Deputy Director of the Bureau of Federal Prisons, what runs through your mind?
What a story. What a story. I've been in the role for about a year now, so it's you settle in, but still every day, just like frankly some of the other things that I've seen God do in my life before this, where I've been walking for a long time going, wow. I think the Lord just continues to do things to make me go, wow. So here we are.
Here we are. And I'm going to rewind the clock, but I just want to ask you this. If you're sitting next to somebody on a plane and they say, well, tell me your story, where do you start?
Yeah. I'd just say it'd be a long story to be able to tell you, and frankly, I don't have enough time. You wouldn't even believe it if I started. So it's it's crazy. You look at my life and what that has been. It's unbelievable for me, and I've lived it. I mean that's I stand every day in amazement of that, and so it's definitely a hard story to tell in a short amount of time.
Well, let's rewind the clock a little bit to your childhood. You grew up in a rough childhood, is that fair to say?
Yeah, I did. Father gone around 2, and my mother moved us into inner cities for a while. Ended up marrying out of that, and went through another relationship, and then that ended, and so moved multiple different times. So really, I've never had a father at any event. Never at anything I've ever celebrated as a kid or a young adult, or frankly an adult. So many people have had it much rougher than me, much rougher. But my life's had its own challenges.
And what did you first get into real trouble that you would say was real trouble?
Well, I mean, by the time I was 13, they took me to visit my first juvenile facility because I'd ran away a few times. There was some issues with another person living in the house. And so, I mean, as a young kid, I ran away 3 times. Then at the age of 16 is when it really hit. I had 10 felonies, all burglary and theft. I mean, I was the kid that you didn't want living in your neighborhood. Nothing dangerous, nothing violent, but just mischievous, with a group of people that we just, wanted attention or wanted to do those things. And this is what we felt like how you survive. You just, take and do these other things. And then major trouble, at around 21, where I'd hung around some people, got to see how they were dealing with drugs and those things, even as somebody who, interesting enough, has never touched a drug other than marijuana in my life. And so then I was dealing drugs at a very large scale very quickly.
And that went on for how many years?
Not even a full year. That was a very short time. That lasted, I think, of a span of between 6 and 9 months.
And what happened? How did it end?
Yeah, so it ended like most criminal enterprises do. I always make the joke, the federal government did not like my entrepreneurial abilities. And they were really good, so I got on the radar very soon. And then I was indicted by the federal government. I was arrested and charged with this conspiracy. They never caught me with anything, but other people had said, hey, this guy's been dealing drugs.
And you were in your mid-20s then?
I was early 20s. I was 21. In fact, I was 21, I was 20, turned 22 just a few days after being, when I started my prison sentence.
Tell me about that experience. You were in prison. Where are you in prison? Remind me.
Yeah, so I went to Manchester, Kentucky. I went to a federal prison at the age of 21. I always say I was just a young punk drug-dealing kid. I mean, no perception of really what life was about. And it was there at this, this camp where they had also locked up a lot of white-collar criminals. So when I went to this prison camp, this was the first time that I was ever exposed to education, right? So here it is, this young punk drug-dealing kid, now with these white-collar criminals.
You hadn't gone to high school or finished high school?
No, hadn't finished high school. And so if you remember back when Enron was a big deal, right? Well, the Department of Justice also locked up a lot of other CEOs and others. And so I was the beneficiary of those types of people. So it was a CEO that started talking to me about business. It was a banker that started, I learned banking and credit and finance, real estate. I mean, as you know, in this town, I own a lot of real estate. All of that started with the mentorship inside of prison.
Wow.
Yeah.
And was it hard time? I mean, I can't imagine prison's a nice place to be. It's not like being on a college campus. That's certainly a benefit. But what was it like just as a young man behind bars for 5 years?
I think no matter where you're at, it's hard, right? When you're away from your family, when you're separated from society, many prisons are way worse than the one that I was in. But all of them, you know, its own challenges. Very difficult. Very hard to be able to find that hope inside of there that actually life can be something different, right? And so you spend a lot of time just really battling, you know, what is it going to look like when I get out of here? What can life be? And that's where my faith, you know, I ended up having an experience with God in prison that changed my life and really changed that path for me in a really big way.
Was it sudden, or did you come to that faith over time?
No, it was sudden. I say sudden. It was, you know, I had just cussed out this gentleman, okay, that was talking to me, and I was angry. And it was that night, just by myself, alone in my bed, that I just had an experience with God that for then just changed the trajectory of my life. But as you know, that purification process takes a long time. Still on it to this day, 30 plus years later. But it was there that really began to shift with me to say, okay, what kind of person do I want to be? Who am I called to be in this world?
And you spent, is it about 5 years in federal prison?
Yep, I did a full 5-year sentence, 53 months on that 60-month sentence.
You walk out of prison, and what's next?
Yeah, well, I had to beg for a $6 an hour job. Went to the same place multiple times just to be able to get a little hardware store. I ended up telling this hardware store owner the third time, I said, listen, I'm really good at cleaning toilets. I'll do the jobs that nobody else wants to do. I just need you to give me a chance. And I worked that job like you were paying me $100,000 a year. I was appreciative, worked hard, and then earned as I went from there. It was shortly time after that is when I started my business. You know, when you start a business, they don't ask you what's your criminal background. They just want to make sure you're going to do the job that they hire you to do. And so I started building that little business, and that business continued to be able to grow, but very difficult getting out of prison and getting even just basically established.
So you saved, and were you able to get a loan from a bank? Did someone trust you enough to give you that option?
So interesting, I had an entire banking plan when I got out. So I got out, went to what they call a halfway house, where they require you to save 25% of your pay. Well, from there, I put it in this bank account. I borrowed a $500 loan against the $500 that I'd saved up and put in there. So that started building credit. I went and got a secured $200 credit card, put $200 up to begin to start building that credit. And it was that banker in prison that taught me about credit, banking, and those things. So I already was fortunate enough to have a plan on how to build credit, how to get established when I got out.
And your business really starts to blossom when? When did you really look at it and say, wow, this is something?
Well, I think, you know, when you do any revenue that's bigger than the last year, you go, wow, this is really good. You know, I mean, I remember when we, you know, gosh, we did a little less than $100,000 in revenue. I thought, this is amazing. You know, it took me 5 years to make over $30,000 in income. So think about that. I mean, I could have made more working at McDonald's during that time. But I knew I was building something. And all the books that I'd read just kept saying, you know, this is the process, this is the process. And so it just continued to grow incrementally over time. Then we did $1 million in revenue. Then we did $3 million in revenue. Then we did $6 billion and $11 million and $17 and all the way up to almost $30 million in revenue over the years. So I got to watch this ride as it happened, just frankly standing back in amazement on how good God was being to me.
What was the niche you were fulfilling in terms of your company? What do you think really resonated with people and allowed it to grow?
Well, the work that we did in the main business was very difficult, very hard work, very physical work. And it was a place where most people didn't want to work. Crawl spaces, basements, really tough jobs of lifting houses. So we just found these specialized services that it was hard for others to just anybody to do. And then we just set ourselves to do it as excellent as anybody could do it. From the minute we answered the phone with you to even when the job was over, and how do we just again put that bow on even the job to where people were appreciative. They had not experienced anything service like that before, and we built a reputation where people kept coming back.
You gave us a snapshot of the revenue. What was the snapshot of the growth over how many years from employees and a handful to what you see when you sold?
So I think let's see, to give you an idea, we started the company in 2008 and sold it in 2019. So in about 11 years, we went from zero to almost 30 million in revenue. The last few years, we had after we hit 10 million in revenue, from there, it grew very quickly. That from there, it was only about 3 years that it took to go from 10 to almost 30.
And how many employees in that time?
Close to 200 employees. Yeah,
when you sold?
When I sold. Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's such a story in and of itself. Mm-hmm. And what made you sell?
Yeah, I had zero plans to sell. Our business wasn't for sale. But there was somebody that really needed it for a business, a certain situation. And it was an amount of money that I looked at and said, okay, business was never my passion. It was a means to an end. I've done a lot of ministry, a lot of focus out in the communities, so we were able to do that through business. But this really allowed, my wife and I to say, hey, let's make a difference in this world. What kind of, my mission statement, my personal why is to leave a footprint on this earth that won't soon be erased. And I just said, this allows us to be able to make that footprint even deeper. And so we decided to sell.
And let's shift to those community benefits and how your faith has driven one of the most important things to you.
Yeah.
Explain that and where it came from.
Well, for me, my relationship with God dictates everything I do, whether it's going to be business or ministry, those things. And even in business, I wanted to make sure that I was serving no matter what. So whether it be from the people that we hired, from the people that we worked with, the people we served, and even our community as we did it. Our why statement for our business was to be a unique service company that radically serves its community. And so when you set that as the mission, that's not only doing business and making money, that is how do we use the resources we have, the equipment, the things, the people, to then be able to serve our community. And I believe we did it then. I think they're doing a great job still continuing on that mission of using business and those things that you have there to really impact your community.
I'm sure you hired people who had been in prison. What was it like to be able to give somebody a job who was in the very same situation you were?
A second chance is a big deal. Now, one of the things that I say all the time, I didn't hire people because they were felons. I just did not hire them because they were felon, okay? So I wasn't going to mess up the team that we were building. Excellence was the standard we were building. But what I didn't do is make the judgment of, hey, just because you had something in your life like that, I wasn't going to make that the reason I didn't hire you. And so being able to hire those, then also being able to walk through those challenges with them, right? The challenges of getting out of prison, being able to be understanding that they're still trying to figure out that car or that transportation to work, or even the clothes. They didn't even have nice clothes sometimes to be able to wear. It meant a lot to be able to do that. And frankly, I've seen people now develop families and go on and have tremendous careers in other places, all because of that very start that they had with our company.
You brought that to Fourth Purpose. Explain that organization.
Yeah, so Fourth Purpose is the foundation that my wife and I did as soon as we sold the company. We put millions of dollars in that foundation, and its mission was to make prison a place of transformation. And so we built the team there and just said, how do we take and change how prisons are operating to where we're sending out less threats to public safety, right? Where we're less victims, we make our streets safer, and not just a recycling of people in these prison systems. And so that's what we set out to do. We put a lot of money, a lot of resources, built a lot of teams to be able to figure out that challenge in our society.
And how many have you helped so far in Fourth Purpose?
You couldn't even put a number on it, because Fourth Purpose does a lot of education to others. So it has not just Fourth Purpose Foundation, but Prison Life Media. So people are able to see these real stories of things. Correctional agencies changing the way that they do things. Inmates changing the way that they do things. So that impact will way outlive me that what Fourth Purpose is having.
Another seminal moment in your life was a pardon. What was that like for you?
That's been now, 5 years ago, and I still have Governor Lee's voicemail message to me on my phone. And it was only a message of saying, hey Josh, Billy, give me a call. And I can't even describe that to you. That call that night of saying, he wasn't even supposed to call me, but he said, I couldn't wait the weekend to tell you that the president has given you a pardon. He had to listen to me, I don't even know how many minutes, just weep. I call it that ugly cry, because as I thought about it, my life had already gotten reestablished, right? So business, finance, all those things were well. But it just felt like the completion of a circle, right? Earning all the earning back what I had lost in reputation, in all those things for that year, just a full circle moment.
When did you get the call for this job?
Yeah, so I got the call for this job, early on after the president had won. And a lot of people were excited, right? Because, hey, new administration, the president was going to really tackle some big challenges this time. And a lot of people care about the criminal justice system. And so they just began that talk with me. In the beginning, I said, no, I would not be interested. It's a big challenge. I was very familiar with the system, the bureaucracy and all the challenges that it has. But the administration just convinced me they were very serious about making it work better. And so as comfortable as my life was here, my kids, my grandkids, I've put in a lot of work to get to where I'm at. I just through conviction, I couldn't say no to going in and really being able to have a chance, an opportunity at making a difference in the largest prison system in the world. So it was time to sign up.
What do you hope you can do? What have you done so far you think that has resonated or made a difference?
I think that, for one, I've been able to show that those that have been involved in earlier times have maybe learned lessons and things that they can be able to then offer into that system. So
your example, when you walk in, you have immediate credibility, I would think, with both the inmates as well as the corrections officers.
Yeah, well, you can imagine the inmates as I walk in, and I can hold them accountable differently than most others that wear a badge as I do. And so I'm able to, I'm not very soft with them. I'm very direct with them because I want to see really good things happen with them. But they know that I have their best interest in heart. They know if they don't, I don't mind, I know the games, so I don't mind holding them accountable. Staff, it's been an adjustment for some of them. You can imagine they're going, wait a minute, how does he feel? But they don't, most of them didn't understand how much work I've done in corrections with correctional staff over the last, multiple years. So they're beginning to see some of the benefits of that.
Yeah, I read something, the Marshall Project had some quotes from corrections officers who were like, how am I going to take orders from this guy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a very legitimate thing, right? That's why It's a record amount. I've been to 64 facilities in the first year. There's people that have been 10 years in this career that have never seen that many prisons. I've done staff recalls at every prison that I go to. I welcome all the staff to come out, and they get to ask me questions or give challenges. And so you're starting to see that now change to where they understand that I have to invest in them for there to be any success in anywhere else. And so you're starting to see that shift. You're still going to have the criticism, you're going to still have that, but as a whole, you can see it in the emails and the surveys and those things where they're seeing, wait a minute, we have some real positive things happening.
What do you hope? It seems like such a bureaucracy, and you said it's the largest prison system in the world. I don't know what that says about our country, but it's just a harsh environment. What do you hope that footprint you talk about will be when you leave this job?
Well, bringing the business experience into this role is probably one of the most valuable pieces that I bring. And so what I hope we can do is streamline things to where it makes it not such a bureaucracy that is very difficult to move. I believe that we can create a workplace that people are happy and enjoy working at. You know, we're right now in a building I still own, but the company that I sold operates in. We were voted the best place to work. You know, I take care of our people. And so I think they're starting to get an semblance of, oh, wait a minute, this guy understands that he has to take care of the very people that are doing these jobs. And so I hope that what the staff understand is the importance of the role that they play in public safety in our society. The general public doesn't understand the real importance of corrections. They don't. But I hope that when I'm done, people can look and say, you know, the right-ran prison system can produce the Josh Smiths more than they do those that we've seen in the newspaper going all the time back to prison and stuff.
That revolving door that we hear so often.
Absolutely. The other thing that I hope that is seen is, you know, we've got 156,000 inmates, okay? That's a lot. Across the country, we have almost 2 million people incarcerated. You can imagine what my story has done for them. So if nothing else, I hope that young Josh Smith that's sitting in prison thinking that this is what their entire life now is going to be defined about can sit there and say, whoa, wait a minute. That guy served time in prison and now he's leading the largest prison system in the world. Maybe I can stop making excuses and I can start making some changes in my life, and my life will be better for it now.
Anything that you've learned that you think would be important for the general public to understand about our prison system now?
You know, I think that these are things that I've learned before this job, but I do think there's a lot of things that I wish the general public knew about corrections. You know, we only see people that we see the news story that we've arrested somebody, they've done this bad violation, right? And then we see the court, we see them getting sentenced and sent away. And then we think, hey, that's done. But that's when the real role of corrections just gets started. So that person that is that menace to society that you dealt with at this small amount of time, now we deal with them 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Not just with the role of keeping them safe and keeping our staff safe, but then to try to turn out a better person in society than what we received. It is a big job, very difficult job, but a very noble mission. And so I think people just, if I wish society understood one thing, it would be that we've got to be really careful till when we get these people. If they're going to live back on our streets one day, we better be making an intentional investment in what that's going to look like. Public safety is important, and corrections plays a tremendous role in that.
And is it my understanding that basically 90% of those people will be back in society at some point? Is that, it seems like that holds true locally for our jail, but is that true in the federal system?
It does. Well, it's actually in the state systems, it generally runs between 90 and 95%. In the federal system, it's 97%. Yet, like in this state, you've got a recidivism rate that hovers around 30% of the state DOC. In our federal system, it's 44% when I took on the job. Failure, tremendous failure. And so, and this state has come a long ways to be able to improve that over the years. Some really good leadership over the last decade in that. But it takes a lot of intentionality to do that. But think about that. The worst story you see on the news, that person, you don't have to worry about them anymore. They're going to be doing life, they're not coming out. But that's not the bulk of people that are in prison. Most of them are going to be our neighbor again one day.
How old are you now?
51.
51. It feels like at 51 you've led, I don't know, 10, 15 lifetimes?
It does feel like that. It definitely does. And when people are hearing the stories, or it's almost like, well, that can't be true. You can't have experienced all of those things in these years. But it's very true.
What's next for you?
You know, people have been asking me that a lot. There's, you know, different job offers I get now all the time, different people asking me to do different things. And, you know, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Whenever God calls me to something else, if He does, whatever that is, then that's what I'll do. I'm fortunate enough to be in a place, in a position where I don't have to worry about planning that next move. I didn't plan this one. So I'm definitely not going to start, you know, thinking about what I'm going to be doing in the future.
But you could be on a beach somewhere and you're still continuing to serve.
I could be, yes, and some people remind me that a lot. Yeah, and so yeah, I can. And but you know, what an opportunity to be able to, you know, allow our lives to mean something. And I think that's important to me. I feel like I've wasted a lot of years in the beginning. I think I've violated and taken for a lot of years in my early years. It really feels good to be giving back and to be a part of that. I didn't get to serve in the military. I didn't do public service like so many great people have been able to do. For me, this is that chance of finally being able to, much later in my life, but to be able to do my duty and serve in just some capacity to government service.
If there's one thing you would hope for an inmate who's going in and going to spend 5, 10 years in prison, what do you want them to think about from you?
You know, I talk to inmates all the time before this job and now this job. And what I let them know is I tell them to look in the mirror every morning, and you're looking at the very person, the reason that's holding you back. The success or failure is going to come from that person in the mirror. Don't use excuses. Don't blame anybody else. You can't blame your past. I've got plenty of past I can blame. Can't blame your childhood, your parents, nobody else. Today's the day to take responsibility for you. And so I think that what I hope they're able to see is that, for one, with God, for two, with, you know, really changing that direction in your life, you too can change the trajectory. You can live a different life than what you've experienced. Or you can make excuses and you can still keep getting the same thing that you've always gotten. Prison, what I always say is it's like Motel 6. Lights will always be left on for you, okay? You've got to make that choice of what kind of life you're going to live.
Anything else, Josh, I should have asked you that you think is important to know about your life?
No, I think that for me right now, it's a real pleasure to be able to serve in this capacity in a way that can really make significant change. I've never been a real political person, okay? And there's all the politics of, you know, the president and this and that, but I'll tell you, when you get past the news stories, there's real transformation happening in D.C. right now, in a lot of government agencies, a lot of divisions. And as an outsider that's never been experienced any of that before, me as a taxpayer looking at this, seeing this change happen, I believe Future is going to tell a really good story about this season and some improvements. And so for me, I'm really thankful to be a part of that. And I think that I'll be able to look back later on in this life and say, this was that 4-year period that government really changed, I think, for the better in many ways, especially inside of the Bureau of Prisons.